there! I know some of you have been waiting for this video on how to eliminate unwanted breathiness from the singing tone. Well, the wait is over, my friends. So when we're talking about singing with an airy tone, we're really talking about hearing a sort of audible leakage of air into the singing tone. It might sound a little something like, "Happy birthday to you." So you can hear that there's an airiness in the sound, an airiness in the tone. It's what we call an unfocused tone. Now we'll often hear professional singers using airy tones as occasional artistic effects to be able to add some softness or maybe some sultriness, or to add a different emotional layer or texture to their singing. And that is all well and good. However, if an airy tone is the only tone that you can produce, if that's the only way that you're able to sing, then you're limiting yourself both technically and artistically. So today I want to talk about getting rid of unwanted airiness or breathiness in the singing tone. That is when you're singing with an airy tone and you don't want to, you want it out of your sound. So I am going to divide this topic into two videos. And today's video I'm just going to talk about the causes, the reasons why we might be experiencing unwanted breathiness or airiness in our tone. And in the second video I'm going to dive right into the possible solutions based on the reasons why we're experiencing the breathiness in our singing tone. So a little bit about me. I was a chronically breathy singer for many, many years, and to this day, I still tend toward breathy tones when I'm tired. When I've had inadequate sleep, I find it very difficult to properly energize my singing voice. So if you're struggling with breathy singing, I assure you that I can empathize. As you'll discover in this video series, breathy singing is actually a pretty complex issue with multiple possible causes or reasons. And the specific reasons are going to determine the training protocol. So as a singing teacher, I am not going to just throw out a bunch of exercises, generic exercises, and just leave you to determine which ones are going to work most effectively for your particular situation. In a training or lesson situation, I would individualize those corrective measures according to what's at the root cause of the individual singer's breathiness. So the actual core reason for breathy singing is poor adduction of the vocal folds. When we talk about adduction, we're talking about bringing them together. So we have the vocal folds, which used to be called the vocal cords, and some people still use that term. They're in here in the larynx, and when we go to phonate, when we try to make sound with our voices, when we sing or speak, those vocal folds come together so that they can vibrate and create that initial sound source. With breathy singing, those vocal folds are not completely together. There's a little bit of a gap between them. And through that gap, air leaks. We get excess air going into the tone. And the sound of airiness that you're hearing is actually the sound of turbulent airflow through the vocal tract. True story. There are many possible reasons why the vocal folds might not be adducting properly or coming together fully, completely. One of which is a weakness or incompetence of the glottal adductor muscles. That is the muscles that draw the vocal folds together to close that space, to close the glottis. And this too may have many possible causes, including poor coordination, poor tonicity of those muscles, and even things like vocal fold paralysis. Another reason why the vocal folds might not be coming together properly might have something to do with poor breath management, poor breath support, and that can include either insufficient breath pressure or a too forceful expulsion of the air. And neither of those extremes is ideal. It puts the vocal instrument out of balance. Another possible reason for the improper adduction of the vocal folds might include just sort of a generalized insufficient vocal effort. Again, that just means that there's something within the voice system that is not operating in a balanced manner. Another possible cause is a mutational chink. And I assure you that it sounds a whole lot worse than it actually is. For some, but not all, prepubescent girls between roughly the ages of 10 and 14, they may have a little bit of a gap at the back portion, the posterior portion of the glottis, through which the air leaks. And the reason for that is because as they're going through puberty, or starting to go through puberty, yes, girls go through voice changes. Those changes are a little bit more subtle than they are for boys. But this voice change, what happens during this period is the intrinsic laryngeal muscles are sometimes developing at different rates, and that can leave things a little bit imbalanced. And apart from ensuring that the singer has all of her technical ducks in a row, so to speak, just sort of ruling out any technical causes or potential technical causes, there's really very little that can be done to improve this mutational chink. It's really a matter of just kind of waiting it out. Another possible reason why a singer might not be able to get good glottal closure is because of things like vocal fold lesions, and that includes vocal nodes, cysts, polyps. So when we have a vocal nodule or node, for example, it's a little callus on the edge of the vocal fold, and when we attempt to bring those vocal folds together, that nodule gets in the way of the vocal fold's ability to be able to come together completely. And so there's a little gap there, and the air starts to leak through. It's a little bit like if you were to put a child's toy underneath an area rug, and there's a little bump there, there's a little bit of a pocket of air around that toy. And that bump is preventing that rug from being able to make complete contact in all areas with the floor. Another reason why some singers might tend toward breathy sounds involves their vocal models. Those singers whom they admire. If the singers whose voices they appreciate the most have a lot of airiness in their tone, those singers are very likely to also try to sort of mimic that sound to create the same kinds of sounds. So before I get into the solutions for breathy singing in the next video, I want to talk a little bit about why singing with an airy tone all the time or frequently is not ideal. The first reason is that when we're singing with an airy tone and the vocal folds aren't fully touching or fully approximated, we get a weaker sound source signal. That means that our voices are not going to be as capable of a full array of dynamic variation, we'll say. So we're not going to be able to sing as loudly in particular. Another reason why it's not ideal to sing with an airy tone is that we have poorer resonance. When we're singing with an airy tone and the sound source is weaker, then we have fewer overtones represented in our sound, in our tone. It's not as full a sound, it's not as rich a tone. The turbulent airflow in our vocal tracts is actually considered noise in the sound source spectrum, not tone. And when we have a weaker sound source signal, we're also likely not to have vibrato. If we do have any vibrato, it's going to be a weaker vibrato. Another reason why singing with an airy tone all the time or frequently is not ideal is that it can be an unhealthy way of phonating, of using our voices. So when there's a gap between the vocal folds, there's a lot more air passing by the vocal folds. And that can have a drying effect on the mucosal lining of the vocal folds. The mucosal lining is what lubricates them. It keeps them protected as they rub off of each other. And if that mucosal lining is dried, that's going to potentially lead to injuries such as vocal nodules. And that's another reason why whispering is considered a very unhealthy way of using our voices for long periods of time. So ideally, we want to turn all of our outgoing air into tone. Now, another reason why singing with an airy tone all the time or frequently is not considered ideal is because that coordination can become deeply ingrained, deeply entrenched in our technical habits. And it can become very, very difficult for us to change those habits and develop new coordination, new reflexes down the road. When we're singing with an airy tone, we use our breath a certain way, a way that may not be productive, a way that may be counterproductive to producing cleaner tones, more focused tones. And so if we're singing that way all the time, we're basically reinforcing those technical habits, which again can become very, very difficult for us to undo later on. And that's why when it comes to young singers in particular, and young singers are more prone, I think, to singing with these breathy tones, especially when they admire those kinds of sounds in their vocal models, with younger singers, it's particularly important that they learn to sing with what we'll call a sort of neutral tone quality. That is a clean tone without any effects added to it, vocal effects, without distortion, without airiness in the tone, just a nice, clean, focused tone, very resonant. And then, as they develop their technique further and as they've mastered that, we'll say, neutral tone, then they can begin to work more on adding these occasional vocal effects for artistic effect. But again, it needs to be something that's a choice rather than a bad habit or an unintentional way of singing, because it's the only way that they know how to sing and they're limited. So how do we eliminate unwanted breathiness from the singing tone? Well, the long and short of it is, we need to achieve balance within the voice system. That is a balance between the breath and the glottal response and the resonator. But for the sake of time, I am going to leave this as a cliffhanger. So you will have to stay tuned for lesson 2 on how to eliminate unwanted breathiness from your singing tone. And in that second video, again, I'm going to talk about the solutions. I'm going to give you specific exercises based on the reasons why you might be experiencing breathiness in your singing tone. So please stay tuned. And also take a moment to click the thumbs up button. I would really appreciate that. It would mean a lot to me. And also subscribe to this channel so that you'll be notified when I get that second video up. Take care.